this is Professor Gavor again, and today we're talking about enhancing development productivity. It's chapter 20 of the McKean book, second to the last lecture. And really when we're talking about enhancing development, we're talking about development of new software applications, new software programs, new software functionality. And in my view, software development projects lend themselves very nicely to project management techniques. And they're also the same as a new product development process in which you're starting from a concept and trying to come up with a finished product. It doesn't matter if it's an automobile or in this case, a computer application or program. Both of them are managed well by project management. So it's a specific kind of project management geared towards a product development. So, the problem with system development. It involved customized software applications for an individual organization. That was the past. That was from when I first started working. Every time you created something almost for your own company. When Fortran and COBOL were the languages, I would create subroutines to make my job easier. I would create small little programs, and the small little programs grew into bigger programs. And that happened at such an amazing pace that it got out of the hands of individual functional people like myself and became the realm of IT people, and then it became the realm of separate companies, third-party organizations that turned into SAP and Oracle. So today, it still means custom building, but development includes selecting, implementing, and integrating packaged software solution. And in fact, if you choose SAP or Oracle today, you don't do a lot of customizing to their software. The customizing all comes from the parameters that you're allowed to change to make their program, to make their ERP system work best for the way you run your business. And there's nothing that everybody thinks their company is unique. There are not that many unique things the way most companies work, especially if they're in the same class of company like consumer packaged goods, where my IT experience is all from that industry. So development projects are still perceived to take too long, cost too much, and deliver limited business value. Well, what do we mean by that? That's a 2009 quote, by the way. It always takes too long. While you're developing things, you're burning money. You're not making any money. You're investing money for the future, so you're spending money. So of course it takes too long and costs too much. It's just the nature of the beast. And if you don't manage it well, it's going to take longer and cost even more. So good project management is essential to make it not take, to minimize the length and to contain the cost as much as possible. Deliver limited business value is, again, a function of management and a function of the management of the implementation and the management of the training that you provide to people so that you start generating value sooner rather than later. So system development success rates show that something like 32% were successful on time, on budget, and with the required features and functions, while 44% were not. I'll tell you why I think, if you add 32 and 44, what do you get? You get 76. Where's the other 24%? It would have been useful to provide that. But here's the story. If you have hurdles that have to be met ROI-wise and time-wise and budget-wise to make a project run, well, of course you're going to sell it that way. Even if you know you can't do it, you're going to try like heck to do it. And if you can pull it off, you're a genius. And you're a person of your word, an executive of your word. If you can't, you get your wrist slapped, but you've also come up with many reasons. Oh, we found this out, we found that out. We were delayed because of this reason. We were delayed because of that. Oh, the COVID virus made it impossible for us to get all our teamwork done in an effective, efficient manner. You could hear all our excuses. So The challenge is measuring productivity in system development. So there's an ongoing, every time you're trying to do this, and systems get more and more complicated. So you want to deliver business value with increasing speed and efficiency always. It's another continuous improvement process. So we want to adapt new methods and approaches. We want to be agile and we want to be flexible into the system design. We want to do incremental design, iterative design, something they call spiraling. Composition, it becomes a process orchestration, combining various software components into an application container. Integration, acquired packaging, packaged software from the cloud. If you can buy it, why make it? And if you can buy it for less, then you could fund the making it of yourself even better. You want to enhance the waterfall methodology. What's a waterfall methodology, you ask? Well, here is something I found, because I was not sure what waterfall meant myself, so I looked it up. It's much like, this is a linear methodology where you have a plateau, you flow into the next thing, and you have a waterfall into the next plateau, and you do some work and you waterfall into the next plateau. Basically what it does is a sequential design process. You do A, and if you meet the hurdles and gate requirements from going from A to B, you go to B. So you waterfall into B. So, and usually most development projects or new product development projects involve things like conception, initiation, analysis, design, construction, testing, implementation, and maintenance. Well, in general, that's what you're going to have most of the time when you do these things. Concept, it's an initiation. This can take the longest time. This is what they call the fuzzy front end of any design process. This whole idea, we have a concept and you're kicking around. When does it become a bona fide project? When do you initiate a formal design from concept to initiation? That's always a tough thing to do. So the advantages of meticulous record keeping, the client knows what to expect. In case of employee turnover, there's strong documentation. The disadvantage is you don't go backwards and it's linear, basically. The whole product is only tested at the end. When should you use it? When there's a clear picture of what the final product should be. The client won't have the ability to change the scope once the product is began. And the definition, when definition, not speed, is the key to success. Another way of looking at it is what they call as agile. So it came about to take advantage of the disadvantages of the waterfall. So you want to do several things at one time. And software works that way. We need a software module that does this. We need a software module that does this. We need a software module that does that. And so we can work on all of them simultaneously. And someone's working on making sure that they can all communicate and all have the same data structures so they can do what they have to do together. So rather than develop software module A and then software module B and software module C, software module D, and then link them all together and test them, which would take, let's say each one takes 3 months. So A, B, C, D, that's 4 of them. That would take a year. So if you could do them simultaneously and allow 1 month up front to integrate and 1 month afterwards, 1 month up front for design integration, conceptual integration, and 1 month afterwards for real integration of the finished product, you're down to 5 months instead of 1 year. So basically that's the difference between the waterfall method and agile. So I think we beat that to death. Improved governance. Well, this is where the project management and a skill comes through. If you're a gifted project manager, and the Project Management Institute has done a beautiful job of having a certification that really is valuable. This PMP certification, it requires 4,000 hours of project management before you can even take the exam. 4,000 hours is 2 full years of project management experience. And if your project management experience is all in software development, and you really become good at being a project manager for software development, you probably will never not have a job. And if you have to look for a job, you'll probably find one very quickly. So, and that in that governance, you're trained your ability to communicate with, manage, placate, acquiesce to, and please stakeholders and communicates with stakeholders is a key part of it. And that's where the improved governance comes from. Oftentimes, a stakeholder, a sponsor will assign someone to run the project. And if they're not being kept up to date and forced to do their stakeholder sponsor job and really look over things, the project will probably take longer and cost more money. A good project manager has these communication skills and techniques and talents for having reviews with the stakeholders and sponsors at several key points to keep them informed and basically organize the presentations in a way that they can make quick decisions and not have to invest. They'll invest enough time, but not feel like they're tied to the project that they've assigned you to actually finish. So you want to change resource strategies. Well, things change. You make a plan ahead of time. We could all make a plan. Probably if I took our class and spent 2 days with full internet access and we had to design a nuclear submarine, I'm sure we could probably have a top level plan that's probably not so bad at the end of 2 days. What do we know about doing nuclear submarines? Nothing. And once we get started, we're going to learn a lot more. And as we learn, oftentimes the first time you're doing things, that's the hardest time, the hardest one to do. And it's when you have to learn all the lessons and you think, you have all these biases like I have all the time. I think something's going to take longer to do than it actually does. That's not actually the bias that I have. I think everything takes less time than it will actually take. So I wait till the last minute and then I'm like, oh my God, this is way more complicated than I thought. And I've got to allocate a lot more hours to it. I don't know if that's made me better or worse. I do wish I could rid myself of that habit. So the use of contractors and outsourced developers to supplement in-house development continuously grows. And you got to do that intelligently. If you bring too many outside people in and give them too much power, it becomes their project and their development project, not yours. Never doubt that it is yours. The globally dispersed development requires new internal business, technical, data, architecture. If you're going to collaborate around the world, in other words, your project follows the sun. I got coders working on it for 12 hours in the US and then 12 hours in India. Or I have 2 shifts of them working on it in India so that I have this project going all the time. You follow the sun, basically. Business involvement. Well, I think we said this in the first presentation in this class. And I'll read business leaders still pay only lip service to their responsibility. They need to be more engaged. Who is getting the software? Who is getting the application? The business is getting the software and the application. To do what? To do business, to conduct business more effectively, more efficiently. So if they only pay lip service, they're going to get whatever IT thinks they need, not what they actually need to have. So we need to have business leaders involved. You have an IT leader and a business leader in a new product development process like this. You might have one project manager working for those 2 leaders. But you need an IT leader and you need a business leader. And I serve that role, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. Analysis. Well, you have to clearly define the scope of the project. Clearly defining the scope of the project is a 2-edged sword. You want to make sure what's going to be in the project, but you also want to make sure what is not in the scope of the project, because everything turns, has what they call scope creep if you're not paying attention. And that's where a simple project, um, you know, turns into solving world hunger. You don't want to do that. This is the little old lady that's having the interior, one bedroom in her house painted, and asks every day the crew that's working there, oh, would you mind touching up a little paint here? The first day it doesn't take that long, so you touch it up. Oh, I have a light bulb that needs to be changed. Will you please change it? And it requires setting up a ladder and climbing up, 17 feet to change a light bulb. The next day, oh, I have a leaky faucet. I know you guys are painters, but could you look? And next thing you know, you've spent an hour or 2 hours of time each day helping the nice little old lady. That's called scope creep. You say, lady, that's not our job. I can't do it. I can give you the number of someone that does it. But that's a small example of scope creep. It took way too long to talk about it. So, and you want to be able to make sure that you have the analysis of what is in the project, what is not, what are the dependencies between parts of the project or several projects if it's a larger scope project. You want to make sure if there's any changes coming to identify them and the impact it will have on the time and budget and make those trade-offs. And that's the way to do good project management. In fact, we have a course on it. And not surprisingly, I teach it. Testing. In IT, they're saying that it takes 20 to 40% of the development effort and resources. Well, how do you test something? You write thousands and thousands of lines of code. You want to make sure it works, and you want to make sure it works through all the extremes that you might have to use it. And you never know where your little errors are, and it could work 90% of the time or 99% of the time, but there's 1% of the transactions that you've made a coding error, and it will bring your system to its knees. Does that ever happen? Yes, it does. It happened to me way back when I used to do coding. So there's no single system development approach that fits all. People tend to use what they think they know the best. And guess what? This theme is here again. Poor communication between IT and business creates misunderstanding and conflicts that can inhibit the project. And how does it inhibit the project? Makes it take longer or cost more money, or delivers an end result that is not as useful to the business as what they expected. So, what do we know that works? When we optimize, we want to look at the bigger picture. We want to have more flexible processes. We want to reduce complexity, enhance success metrics, and create smarter development environment. So what are we talking about optimizing? IT and business must be closely aligned. I think we've talked about that in every chapter, every lecture that we've had in this class. All aspects of earlier stages of system development need to be reassessed and streamlined. Well, if it worked before, you want to probably do it again. But at the end of the previous project, you should do what they call an after-action review. And this comes from the U.S. Army, and it says, okay, we just did this. What did we learn so that next time we do this, we can do it faster and better and with more agility? That's what we're talking about. You want to take those lessons learned from the last time you did it and implement them here. And you want to make sure that you have your resources and the parts that you're sourcing from outside your company aligned, and you want to manage those very well. So that's really amount of planning that is involved in the beginning. And when you're not putting finger to keyboard, it looks like you're really just wasting your time. What are those guys doing? They're just sitting in a conference room or on Zoom calls planning and planning and planning and planning. Well, if you take, if you cut your planning in half, your project may take, 50% longer to complete. But if you take maybe, you know, enough time or a longer time to plan, you'll save on the other end. You won't have to you have to do the same amount of planning, so you might as well do it all up front if you can. Because if not, you got to stop in the middle and plan, and then you got to stop the third way through, halfway through, three-quarters of the way through, and plan some more. So, and you'll delay your project sometimes even more doing that because you might have to go and undo what you did. So, remember, we said just enough waterfall. That waterfall is there's nothing wrong with that process. Those sequential steps kind of has to happen. But rather than sequential development, you could develop the different parts all at the same time. So you want just enough waterfall should be the goal. Organizations have tools that help determine levels of oversight and control and take advantage of those in your company. If you're doing it for the first time, well, you're breaking new ground. You're blazing a trail through the jungle with a machete. But next people that follow you, next time you follow the same trail. And if you realize you went the wrong way, blaze a smaller part of it. Before you know it, that trail will turn into a path. The path will turn into a dirt road. The dirt road will eventually get paved, and at some point you'll have an interstate in which instead of walking through it, you're driving a sports car at 80 miles an hour. All right, that was kind of an okay metaphor, I guess. Reduce complexity. We love to make things complex, don't we? I mean, if I can fill a blackboard up with equations, I really feel like I've done something. But simplicity is what you want. You want to make it complex enough to get done what you need to get done, but not make it overly complicated. Overly complicated increases the probability of coding errors. So the simpler you can make it, the more elegant you can make it, the more clever you can make it and still achieve all your goals. That should always be what you try to do. Success metrics. What are success metrics? Well, it's, they're talking about 4 goals here. You want to make sure that you have increased buy-in. So you want to be able to include people in your development process that will be using it. If they're part of the development process, or at least representatives from their areas are on your development team, they have equity in it and increases their buy-in. You want to promote the desired behavior and make sure that your software is delivering those. And you want to have that can-do attitude, I suppose. You want to educate the perceptions. People think that the software will do this. Yes, I hear what you're saying, but the software won't do exactly that. We are at the technology and a level right now where we'll be able to deliver 80% of that capability, and it's still going to be the other 20% where you have to handle it this way. And you want to monitor the performance. You want to monitor the time and the money that you're spending and make sure, when we talk about the project management triangle, we're talking about the time it takes, the budget, how long the budget, how much of the budget you're spending, and you want to talk about the actual scope and deliverables of the project. And you want to find out what is important to your stakeholders and sponsor. Many companies, we've talked about this before. Some companies, it has to be done, if you're a Christmas-centric sales company, consumer goods company, you don't want to be launching it in the 4th quarter of the year when you need your systems to be operating at full effectiveness for your busiest sales season of the year. So, you want to launch it probably in the 2nd quarter or the 2nd quarter of the year. And that way you're ready to go when the big season hits. Other companies, I don't care how long it takes, but don't spend more than a penny more than this amount. Budget is important. Don't want to screw with the budget. So you know that if it's going to cost you more money, you're going to have to trade something else off. You're going to have to take, well, time is associated with money. So you don't want to take longer to do it. You're probably going to cut back on your deliverable, the scope of the project, to achieve that. On the other hand, you got the NASA version, where scope is the single most important thing. The safety of the astronauts, the success of the mission. I'd rather have the project take longer. I'd rather have the project cost more than have any risk in safety. So the scope there is more important. So you have to manage that triangle and keep track of that. You want a smarter development environment. So you want to be able to share information. You want, and all the collaboration tools that we have, and some of them we spoke of, are just magnificent for this. Rather than having a war room with paper taped to the walls and, whiteboards and dry erase markers and all this, you're still going to have some of that. But most of the time, you want to keep track of this where your development team could be scattered all over the earth, but you could pull them together and all be in the same virtual war room instead of actually being in a war room. And what are the next steps? You want to find out where your bottlenecks are. Well, if you have project management, if you go through all the steps of project management, you're going to find out what your critical path is. It's all the little sub-tasks that you need to do that will define, if you do them all on time, it will define the shortest amount of time you can get the project done in. And as you learn more, that critical path could get so short, could shorten up to the point where something else becomes a critical path, or actually steps in the critical path you realize are going to take longer or cost more than you thought of before, and you have to reevaluate and recalculate at that point. You want to focus on the outcomes. Remember the scope. Focus on what you decided and agreed upon was in the scope, and guard against scope creep. You want to make sure everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. We have a project right now at North Park for opening up the fall term in this COVID pandemic era. And we've got a member on our team that thinks they're an expert in everything and is always makes every meeting take longer by commenting on everything, and it's not in his scope. It's not in his role. It's not in his responsibility, to the point where we had to have one of the senior team members actually take this guy behind the, into a separate room and talk to him privately and say, you've got to stop giving him feedback because you're making everything take longer. So simplify the development environment, simplify the testing, and not so simple. It's got to be complex enough to get the job done, but no more complex than that. So it's a new product development in any product or service can be a very complex process. And the more complicated the product, be it a large computer system versus a small app, be it a brand new state of the art automobile versus a hard drive. Cars have hard drives in them sometimes. So you want to make sure that your organization is up to this ongoing challenge and overcome the dilemma of development and of productivity. You want to make sure that you're productive. You want to make sure you're moving along, and you want to make sure that you're minimizing time and budget to the best of your ability while trying to maintain scope. So you want to constantly analyze what's going on, what's working and what doesn't, and make course adjustments. It's like being the captain of a sailing ship where you're trimming the sails and directing everybody to, lift, tote, bail, drop that sail, tighten this rope, loosen that rope, whatever. And don't forget to take up the anchor. And that's it for this presentation. Thank you so much. Talk to you again soon.